Welcome to WSM's Liquorice All Sports Podcast. Proudly brought to you by sponsor Bricky Cafe, located at 27 Hutton Street, Thornbury, directly across the road from the Thornbury train station. For all your coffee, cakes, and food needs, please come down to Bricky Cafe. Let's get into it. Welcome to the WSM US Open podcast preview show for 2020. On the line today, I've got Brett Phillips, SEN announcer and the founder and creator of the First Serve podcast and live show, which is on SEN every week. Welcome to the show, Brett. How are you going today?
Thank you, Rob. Going very well, mate. Nice to join you. And yeah, it's a strange old year. We're doing a lot of stuff over Zoom. Well, I'm getting quite comfortable with Zoom. I could just do every meeting rather than go out and meet people. I'd be happy to talk about that. I think we miss that face-to-face, but we can still, through technology, keep communicating, which is a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. As you say, it's a different world we're living in 2020, but it's the new norm, so to speak, and it's actually quite a good way of integrating with people. And I've learned quite a few skills, funnily enough, in the last 6 months. So hopefully it doesn't go on for too much longer, but I've got to keep a smile on the dial and away we go. So, Brett, US Open starting in only a few days from now. I'm really keen to get a few of your answers. Look, it's been a long year. We haven't had a tournament since the Australian Open, which was back in, January now, early Feb. How do you see this tournament going, as there will be no crowds for the very first time in the US Open history? How do you see this tournament going in just the general run of it? How do you see it all playing out in the next couple of weeks over in New York?
Yeah, look, it's going to be extremely unique. I've got to say I'm disappointed, having been to the last three US Opens with no international media allowed to come along. So there'll be ESPN, the host broadcaster, on site, which will be feeding pictures back to Australia, which will be terrific, and to so many countries, Rob, around the world. But look, hats off to the USTA. They've taken a lot of criticism. And I must say, reading the players' social media accounts in the last few days, so many ticks from all of them who were probably a little bit sceptical. There's plenty of them who have said, no, I'm not going. There are those who just want to start earning again, who haven't earned for 6 months, who are lower down the tennis scale.
Yep.
And those who just love playing tennis, who probably got enough money that might allow them to sit out the rest of 2020 or maybe sit out the US Open, but they just want to get back and do what they love. And look, there was a heap of protocols put in place, a lot of these type of meetings with all the players for them to ask questions, for them to be, for them to feel safe that getting to New York and participating in the US Open was going to be to their benefit. So I think for the players, we spoke to John Peers on our show, the First Serve this week, Australian Open Grand Slam doubles champion, and his major concern was getting to New York. Once the players got on the ground, he said they've all felt really comfortable, from the transport to the quarantine hotels. They do the test, then they've had, sealed transport out to Flushing Meadows to practice, straight back to the quarantine, or, sort of really sealed in accommodation. So the players feel really good. They've said the USTA is going above and beyond. And you would expect that from a professional organisation running one of our four major tournaments in tennis. So, yeah, look, it's going to be different. Certainly for now, it feels like a typical pre-tournament for the players, because it is a ghost town when they're out there practicing. When they get into competition, that's when it'll feel totally different, that there's no atmosphere, there's no vibe, there's no cheering. We've got Cincinnati to start. So Cincinnati gets underway in a couple of days. That'll lead into the US Open. So that's different because Cincinnati is not normally at Flushing Meadows, and you don't normally have a Masters 1000 event for the men and a premier event for the women played right on the eve of a Grand Slam. Normally there's a little bit of separation. So it's going to be very, very different, but it is great to see tennis back. I mean, the girls have been back for a couple of weeks, playing a couple of WTA tournaments in Europe and also in America, but the men have been starved for a long time, mate. So with all the other sports starting around the globe, tennis, yes, has so many more challenging logistics because of its global nature, but it had to come back, and hats off to the US Open. But it'll be interesting. I mean, we've actually learned this morning, Rob, that a couple of players have actually pulled out of Cincinnati because they didn't test positive to COVID, but their entourage have tested positive, which means they're quarantine ahead of the US Open. So fingers crossed it's not going to be too widespread. But, when you've got so many people coming on site from the players to their entourages, it was never going to be totally, nil as far as, possible COVID cases. But, I think the US is putting so many good things in place that, the tournament won't fall apart because of maybe one or two indiscretions.
Yep. What do you make of, I think this is intriguing, the Western Southern Open, which is obviously the Cincinnati Open. Obviously, they usually play in different weeks, but they've just combined them all into one. They've rolled them out all into one, so to speak, so one sort of super tournament in a sense. How do you see that? And do you think that could potentially be the way of the future, to do two events at a key event?
Well, who knows? I think tennis has got so much to think about. It's given tennis a great opportunity to think about. The biggest issue in tennis has always been the calendar, because everyone wants their slice of the pie. All these tournaments around the world are sort of privately run. I mean, the ATP, the WTA, their tours govern the tournaments, but then the tournaments are owned by people who have got obviously quite wealthy pockets, and they go out and then source sponsorship in order to deliver prize money, etc. So the ATP's cash cow is their year-end finals, which are always in London, which they totally manage and run and fund and control. But for the rest of the tournaments, and there's plenty that have fallen by the wayside this year, mate. And there's some that might not come back because those smaller tournaments, I'm talking the 250s and the 500 levels,
yep.
And some of them couldn't have gone ahead because they actually need bums on seats. They get their money through corporate hospitality and ticket sales, not so much TV revenue. And that's why the US Open can go ahead, because they can still get the broadcasting money from ESPN, which sort of offsets a bit, the crowds that are not going to be there. So, look, possibly tennis has got to think how to keep making the product better. Do you maybe have more men's and women's events together? That's been a big talking point as well. I mean, there are so many things to have a look at here, but because the calendar's been totally dismantled, what they've tried to do is give players as many earning opportunities as possible. And an event like Cincinnati offers far more prize money than some of those lower tier events. So let's try and put two together, and it's a nice build up to a Grand Slam and get some dollars back in the players' pockets.
Definitely. Now, to automatically qualify for the US Open, it was you had to be, for the Australian players, ranked within inside the top 127, I believe. So if you're in top 127 seed, automatically qualified. There's been a few wildcards have come into that equation. What did you make of that system, and did you like it? Do you think it was a fair system? And how can you see that playing out, obviously, in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, well, this is the big difference this year of the US Open. There's no qualifying tournament. So what they've said, and that really was to just limit the amount of people on site, because if you add in another 128 players on either side in qualifying, added on to the 256 or so that are going to be there for the main draw, then that could be a disaster from a social distancing and COVID point of view. So they said, okay, we're going to scrap the qualifying tournament. They have offered compensation, the USTA and the tours, to those players that would have been eligible to be in qualifying, so they'll get a payment of sorts. But yeah, certainly it's probably worked in the favour of a few of our Aussie girls who would have been in qualifying normally. And I speak of Astra Sharma, Lizette Cabrera and Madison Inglis, who are all between that 114 and 127 mark that you mentioned. So they now get straight into the main draw. So win or lose, they're guaranteed $61,000 US. I mean, you take a bit of tax out and travel, it probably, it's less, but still for them, for what they've earned in their career, it's a nice little payday. And that's why that trio in particular were very, very keen to play. So, yeah, I think that's the way it's had to go. We've seen more withdrawals, certainly from the women's side. I think 6 of the top 10. That's extraordinary. And this is the first time in US Open history we've got so many withdrawals from the top 10. Barty we knew about, Halep, Svitolina, Andreescu, the defending champion last year, Kiki Bertens and Belinda Bencic. And who knows if we'll have a few more. Most of the men are intact, apart from Nadal and Federer, which are two huge outs. Monfils, Fognini, Wawrinka, top 20 players, Kyrgios being the draw card that he is, Joe Wilfried Songa, but still Novak, there's still Dominic Thiem, Medvedev, Tsitsipas, Zverev, Berrettini, all these exciting young players in the game who are really challenging. So the men's side is still a pretty good field.
You mentioned Daniil Medvedev. He's won. He lost the final last year against Rafael Nadal. He's won. I don't think he's quite there, but he's going to be threatening. He's only, I think, about 24 years of age. So what do you think? Do you think a player with his ilk, ranked around that top 20, do you think he's one that might be able to push a Novak, come the second week of the US Open?
Well, this is the question we keep asking. When are the next breed going to be able to step up and win a Grand Slam? And maybe with some time off. I mean, that's how good this trio's been. But, yeah, certainly no Nadal, no Federer opens up the draw to go a little bit deeper for these guys to maybe grab a semi-final spot. And some haven't.
Perhaps even a Dominic Thiem who performed quite well made the Australian Open final.
Yeah, well, Thiem, I think, if you're looking at the next cab off the rank, if we put Djokovic into a separate conversation, because if he's in the draw, he has to go in as the favourite, particularly with Federer and Nadal out. So let's have Novak as the clear-cut favourite. If Djokovic falls over, who knows? He's human. He does have moments, Novak, where he's not as invincible as other times. He can get the wobbles. Dominic Thiem is certainly the next one. He's a little bit older than those guys that I mentioned too. So 25, 26, 3 Grand Slam finals now. He's run up against Nadal and Djokovic, so it's pretty tough. And look, he probably should have beaten Novak in that Australian Open final. He had him on absolute toast last year, but just couldn't put the final killer punch in. So Thiem, I think, and this guy loves playing tennis. I mean, there's no more hungry competitor out there. I think all our Aussie players could learn so much from Dominic Thiem. The 1%ers, all the things he does to prepare. I've seen him behind closed doors. I've seen him in the corridors. Rob, this guy is just fanatical about doing everything he can to be the best version of himself. And I think Medvedev at that next brigade is probably the best equipped when you look at Tsitsipas, Zverev, Berrettini. I reckon Daniil's got now the mental fortitude to maybe press through and win a Grand Slam, but they're hard to win on the men's side.
100%. And while we're staying on the men's side of the draw, what about the Aussie contingent? Obviously, less men's players be travelling over there or who are already currently in New York. Out of the Aussie squad, obviously Nick Kyrgios is a huge out. He announced that he won't be participating, so he would have been the number 1 seed going into the US Open on the Aussie side of things. So out of the men's group, who can you see really pushing these top guys and perhaps getting to the 4th round the second week?
Well, Alex de Minaur right now is our top Aussie. So he's at 26, made the 4th round in New York last year. Did okay. Yeah, I mean, that's his best performance. And, he's talk about hungry. I mean, this guy, through COVID, I mean, his social media has been very entertaining to follow because he's been holed up in Spain where he spent so much of his youth and just absolutely doing his head in. I mean, this little apartment on his own, he couldn't. He's got his younger siblings over in Spain, but he couldn't actually hang out with them for a period of time. And it was quite funny, his social media, because this guy's used to travelling, playing tennis, being on a practice court, being in the gym, lives and breathes tennis. And we love him because he's such a great competitor and a huge talent. Now, it might be a US Open where we get an Alex de Minaur or the like around him. There's so many good young players, Fritz and Shapovalov and Felix Auger, Aliassime, the Canadian. I mean, there's such a good talented pack coming that any of these guys could maybe go a little bit deeper. But de Minaur, certainly the best equipped. I mean, John Millman, we saw that great quarterfinal performance 2 years ago. He knocked off Roger Federer to make the quarters. We know Johnny will give a great account of himself and, there's an opportunity maybe for him to go a little deeper. And Jordan Thompson and James Duckworth will be in the draw as well. I mean, I think Tomo's developing really nicely. I'd love to see him break through. I mean, not too many work harder than Jordan Thompson, let me tell you. I mean, he hasn't got maybe the talent of a Kyrgios or a de Minaur, but, he's got the tennis IQ. Duckworth not playing Cincinnati qualifying this week. He stayed in Brisbane to play the UTR event just to get some matches under his belt. He'll head over. He's inside that top 100. Let's hope his body stays intact. The really good story is Chris O'Connell. Chris O'Connell last year, Rob, won about 82 matches, and he lost his ranking at one stage. He jumped a massive jump in the rankings to be on the cusp of the top 100. This guy can play. He's got a beautiful single-handed backhand. I'd love to see him get into double figures as far as the rankings are concerned. But one thing guaranteed, our Aussies will give a very, very good account of themselves.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that, and can't wait. You mentioned John Millman. He's one of my favourites. Even at the Aussie Open, he had Federer. I wouldn't say on toast because you can never count the Fed Express out, but that was an amazing match. I was at Melbourne Park that night, and I really hope a guy like Millman, he deserves, if he could push to a semi-final or that's really deep in the second week, I think it'd just be huge for Australian tennis. And post-COVID, just if we can get an Aussie men's or women's player who reaches, goes deep, I think once post-COVID, I think it will set up a really good atmosphere at local tennis courts as well, I think just for the next generation and all those who follow tennis upcoming. But look, we'll move to the women's side of the draw. Very interesting. Serena Williams. She's lost her past 4 major finals, and she's obviously hunting the record. Unable to do it thus far. She's only getting older, late 30s now. Brett, how do you see her preparing for this tournament? She actually, I just read in one of the local papers, she actually had the US Open style court shipped to her house. So she's been getting the practice that she needs. Obviously, a clear threat. How do you see her fortnight going at the US Open?
It's phenomenal, isn't it? I mean, she's 38, I think soon to turn 39 in September. So, yeah, it is extraordinary. I mean, she right now would be, in a way, licking her lips with 6 of the top 10 out. I mean, if she's going to get to 24, if it can't happen here in New York,
I agree,
then you almost absolutely put the ruler through her equaling Margaret Court's record. It'd be a shame if she didn't. I mean, she's been sitting on 23 for an eternity. She's had a child amongst, the 4 Grand Slam finals that she's lost. Well, she's played very good tournaments and just played really ordinary finals. But hats off to her opponents too. They've played some good tennis, but Serena hasn't been at her best. And even the champions can get tight and not execute. And that's been evident during the finals that she's played. But, when I look at what's left in that top 10, Karolina Pliskova hasn't broken through yet. The big, tall, lanky Czech who is quite laconic, got big ground strokes, but I don't think maybe got the mental toughness to win a Grand Slam. Sophia Kenin, I mean, winning the Australian Open was quite extraordinary. And then Osaka, well, there's the down on Naomi. I mean, she had a really ordinary year last year. It didn't fire when it really counted most. She's dropped down. She was obviously world number 1. She's dropped down to 10. So if Serena can get it right when it counts most, I mean, she should go deep here and equal Margaret Court's record. Now, I'm not prepared to categorically say she'll win it because every time I do, she finds a way to stumble and not play at her best. And these young girls want to take her scalp. And I think these young players now believe she's not as invincible as she used to be, and you can expose her. I mean, I've been surprised that more players probably haven't exposed Serena for years, but they get intimidated before they start. But if you get Williams on her bike and get her into uncomfortable areas on the tennis court, that's not what Serena wants. She wants the ball in her hitting zone, and she can just dismantle you with power. So the girls are going to take a lot of risks, play near the tram lines, get the angles right, get Serena moving. She doesn't like that at 38 years of age. She wants to be chasing that many tennis balls around the court. She wants to stand and deliver from the back.
Definitely. One player who intrigues me and former winner of the US Open, Sloane Stephens. I've seen her over the last few years, so much talent, right? And at her best, like you mentioned, sort of taking on the Serenas, I think she's almost like a prototype of an elite, what an elite women's tennis player should be. But I think maybe her confidence or a bit of self-doubt, I'm not really sure. I'm not an expert, but her best is elite. And then her worst is sort of, she's hard to read. What about a player like her? Do you think at her home court, her home slam, could she cause some damage in what is a really uncertain time for all the players without any exposed form?
I've got to tell you, Rob, trying to predict Sloane Stephens is the toughest assignment in tennis because you're right. We dubbed her the big event specialist at one stage because she won the US Open, she won Miami. She performed when it counted at these big events. And then she'd slip down to the lower WTA events and she'd bomb out first round to an opponent that we had never heard of, who wasn't even on the radar. And she can have days when she just stinks it up. And you can tell in the first 5 minutes, the body language, the shoulder slump, she can't keep a ball in court. She's gone through that many changes of coaches, back and forth, who obviously get extremely frustrated with her. Look, she's a lovely girl off court. I think she's been engaged this year, and she's a very talented player. But gee, she's yo-yo. There's plenty, but she's not alone.
No,
there's quite a few in the women's game that yo-yo. Garbiñe Muguruza is another one who's been at the top, and then she drifts out to 20 odd in the world, drifts back. They haven't had quite maybe the consistency of the men. But on her day, Sloane Stephens can play, absolutely. But you just don't know what you're going to get.
And a good news story, she was formerly known as Aussie Kim Clijsters, makes her return to the US Open. How do you see, pretty courageous effort to come back and said, look, this is the last dance, so to speak. Give it one last crack. I think she's, 37, 38 years of age. How do you see, well, we don't really know, but it's just a good news story, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great part about tennis, isn't it? That you can call it a day when you want to call it a day, and if you want to come back, you can come back. You're not in a team sport where they're tapping you on the shoulder and saying it's done. Certainly for a lot of the female players in this era, going back a little while now, but, have kids and come back and have a second stint because those competitive juices don't disappear. And the thing with Kim, when she retired, and people thought at the time she could have gone longer, but she wanted to have a family and concentrate on that, and fair enough. But anytime you'd see Kim around the different Grand Slam tournaments, she was always out hitting. A lot of retired players don't necessarily like to get out and hit. Some go down the coaching path and will stand at the back of the court and, like Boris Becker, and hobble along and throw a few balls and give a few tactics. But Kim loved to still hit and be active and keep fit. So it's not a surprise that she's probably come back. She'd be disappointed the way the years panned out because she got herself to a fitness level that she could come back and be competitive. We saw her in early February after the Australian Open play a couple of tournaments, and she, I think, played Garbiñe Muguruza. It might have been in Dubai or Doha, where she pushed her to a tiebreaker, and she can still play. So she lost all that momentum. Whether she can get it back, we'll have to wait and see. I do notice in the women's doubles, which has come out today, she's going to play with a young American called Hailey Baptiste. So Hailey's only 18, Kim at 37. Opposite ends of the spectrum coming together, which will be that'll be a good story as a wildcard pairing in the women's doubles. But yeah, I think you don't really want to play probably Kim Clijsters because she's still got the desire and you never lost your talent.
Definitely an Aussie favourite from back in the day. And just quickly, I wanted to touch on both the men's and women's doubles. We had Max Purcell really push. They nearly won a final, the men's Aussie doubles at the Australian Open. And the women's, how do you see a combination in that spectrum who can potentially, whether it's Aussies or who do you see actually pushing really deep in the both men's and women's doubles?
Yeah, we've had the entry lists come out today, and it's fascinating. So just from a men's point of view, John Peers, who we spoke to, Peers, a Grand Slam champion. He's got a new partner this year in Michael Venus of New Zealand. So just before COVID struck, they won Dubai together, and then Pearcey came to play the Davis Cup in Adelaide, and then the tour was halted from there. So these two guys know each other really well. We know John Peers had a lot of success with Henry Continent from Finland, winning ATP finals and the Aussie Open back in 2017, I think it was. So new partner for him. And then you mentioned, Max and Luke Saville, Max Purcell, Luke Saville. A real surprise packet to make the Australian Open final earlier this year. Now, what's interesting, by making that final, their rankings jumped so significantly that they can now enter tournaments like this, a Masters 1000 in doubles, where the prize money is pretty decent. But they actually didn't sign on until they got on site, which was interesting. So they're definitely in. And these two are, still a work in progress in a lot of ways, but they've got great chemistry. They're really good mates. Nathan Healy, who I've got a huge regard for, who played on the tour, coaches Max, done a lot of great work with Purcell, who we're hoping also takes that singles jump as well. He's about 200 in the world at this stage. And on the women's side, mate, Ellen Perez and Storm Sanders will play together. They've been pretty successful.
She's a fire little character. She's a good player.
Yeah, no doubt. And Arina Rodionova's in the draw as well on the women's doubles. So the women's doubles won't have, a bit like Ash Barty, number one player out on the singles side. The top pairing in women's doubles are not playing the US Open. Shea Suwei of Chinese Taipei and Barbora Strycova of the Czech Republic opting to not travel to New York. So that just opens the field up a little bit.
Definitely. And I just want to touch on this before we finish today's show, Brett. The GOAT. We've got, obviously, Federer on 20, Nadal on 19. We've got Djokovic a couple back on 17. With obviously, Djokovic is probably the red-hot favourite, the clear-hot favourite. In this one, by the end of their careers, 10 years from now, who knows, they might be still playing 10 years from now, the way they're going. But Who will finish? Who will get the most majors by the end of their career, in your humble opinion?
Well, I think weight of numbers and age. I mean, Novak's, 5 years, 6 years younger than Roger. So
32, 33.
So if he plays the same length of time as Federer, and I'm not necessarily convinced that Novak will still be playing at 38. I think Roger's unique. I mean, Roger, I think there's every chance Roger could play till he's 40. I mean, he's still in good nick, and he's had basically this year off to get the body right after having been in knee surgery. But I think, if Djokovic maintains everything that he needs to do, his game, his love for the sport, he should go past these two, I would say. Now, whether that makes you the greatest of all time, we have this debate all the time. I have it with people. I personally don't think it's just purely statistics. I think there's other factors you have to bring in. So everyone will have a different view, but aesthetically, for me, and all the time that I've watched tennis, Roger Federer is the best player I've seen.
Yep.
He may not win the most majors in history because, unfortunately, he's on a bit of father time as the career is ticking closer to the end. And the competition's damn tough around him. But I still think Roger Federer, in the annals of history, in my view, will go down as probably the greatest player of all time because of just what he does on the tennis court. But that's only my opinion.
Definitely. I agree. Look, I'm a big Nadal fan. I just love it. It's two completely different styles. Nadal's just run and gun. Federer is just a natural player. So interesting to see. And just on Nadal, the French Open has been announced, so we'll go ahead. Do you see him winning, is it 13th French Open? Am I correct in saying that? Do you see him winning it this year? I think he's won 12. He's won 12, and I think he's going for 13.
He's up to 13. Unlucky for some. Look, he has to start as a favourite at Roland Garros. It's going to be interesting with the French. I mean, they're talking about 50, 60% crowds. Whether that can happen, I noticed they've changed the mask rules in Paris in the last couple of weeks. It's had a little bit of an outbreak there. But, I think he has to start favourite always. But Dominic Thiem, I remember back to that final one was at Roland Garros last year, and, he had his chances. He had his chances early on to get an advantage, and he just couldn't quite nail that little window that he had. And if you don't nail it against Nadal on clay, it comes back to bite you in a big way, Rob. So has to start favourite, but it'd be nice to see a different French Open champion. Last, Gaston Gaudio was the man who won the French in '99 before Nadal got on a bit of a tear. So it's had two eras, the French, and had all those years where you had all these guys win one-off French Opens, and a lot of them were never a chance to win any other major, but they had two outstanding weeks, and then we get the dominance of Nadal. So, interesting.
Definitely. All right, so just to cap it off, so your winner for the men's side of the draw, the women's side of the draw, men's doubles and women's doubles. So give me those four answers, and away you go.
Well, I think on the women's side, I tell you what, I'm going to back in Serena one last time here. I feel like
here we go. Serena, love it.
I just look at the 6 of the top 10 out. I just think she's got to get it done here, and I want to see her get to 24. So there's probably a little bit of heart in that conversation. Djokovic, I think if he's at his best, he is by far the best player in the world. So I'm going out on a bit of a limb by saying Novak. As far as the doubles are concerned, look, the combination of Kristina Mladenovic of France and Timea Babos of Hungary, I mean, they have been a great combination winning Grand Slams, Rob. So they're right up there, although Sabalenka and Mertens are the defending champions. I would expect that to be the final. They've been absolutely outstanding. And as far as the men's doubles are concerned, I do notice that the Bryan brothers aren't playing, which is really interesting. This was supposed to be their final year. The two guys that have won the most ever men's doubles at Grand Slams ever in history, but they've opted out. So let's hope they're maybe going to stick around for 2021 because we want the world wants to farewell them. Ferrar and Cabal, the Colombians, are the number one seeds. They've been really, really good. I do like Joe Salisbury and Rajiv Ram, who won the Australian Open earlier this year. They played some great tennis. So
I'll watch that.
Knock off the number ones.
Well, thank you so much for joining WSM's US Open preview show for 2020. And just for the, do you want to give the First Serve plug and where can they find that and what time during the week you're on SEN?
Yeah, good on you, Rob. Thank you for that. Well, we've been shifted around a little bit with the footy frenzy at the moment. So our normal slot is Monday night, 7 till 8 o'clock, live every week. It's the only show in Australia where people can call in and actually discuss tennis and be part of the show. But next week, we're actually on Tuesday night between 7 and 8 with the footy on Monday night. But look, our website, basically you can find out all our broadcast details, thefirstserve.com.au. We've also got 3 separate podcasts that run right throughout the week as well. Aussies Only, Crunching the Numbers, and In the Huddle. So there's 4 lots of sort of content offering throughout a week if you're a tennis fan. Plenty of great written content from all our team throughout the year, plenty of good opinion pieces. So, yeah, thefirstserve.com.au, and we'll hopefully keep people entertained.
Well, Brett, appreciate it, mate. Best of luck, and hopefully we get through this. Hopefully the floodgates open when we do get past this COVID-19 lockdown, mate. So once again, thanks for joining, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Yeah, pleasure, mate. Anytime.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that video, please make sure to give it a like. And if you want to check out some of my other videos, please make sure you click the subscribe button and give Winston Sports Media a subscribe and follow. Thank you so much.